I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The first time I noticed something was wrong at my company was on a Tuesday in April. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a feeling, a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the offices I had built from nothing over 30 years ago. As I walked through the open workspace of Harris Family Consulting, I noticed how conversations stopped when I approached, how employees who used to greet me warmly now offered tight smiles before quickly looking away. Probably nothing, I told myself, smoothing down my tailored navy suit as I headed toward my corner office. At 62, I've developed an almost supernatural ability to sense trouble before it fully materializes. My husband, Thomas, calls it my witch sense and jokes that I can smell a financial irregularity from a mile away. "Morning, Mom." Liam's voice cut through my thoughts as he emerged from the conference room. His tall frame impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than what most of our employees make in a week. At 35, my son has grown into a handsome man with his father's charm and what I once believed was my own business acumen. "Liam," I nodded, noticing he wasn't alone. His wife Evelyn emerged behind him, elegant as always in a red dress that somehow walked the line between professional and runway ready. "Rebecca, darling." Evelyn air-kissed both my cheeks, her signature perfume leaving a cloud of expensive scent in her wake. "We just finished the meeting with the Petersons. Absolute success. They're increasing their contract by 30%. The Petersons, I frowned. But they weren't scheduled for a review until next month. Something flickered across Liam's face, so brief I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. "They called last week wanting to move it up. I handled it since you were busy with the Wilson account." "I see." I didn't recall being particularly busy with the Wilson account. In fact, I hadn't spoken to the Wilsons in weeks, but before I could probe further, Liam smoothly changed the subject. "Speaking of which, how did that go? Dad mentioned you were worried about their expansion plans." I allowed the conversation to shift, making a mental note to call the Petersons myself later. "It went fine. They agreed to a more conservative approach for the first quarter." "Always the careful one," Evelyn smiled, her perfect teeth gleaming. "Liam and I were just saying how the company could benefit from taking a few more calculated risks these days. The market rewards boldness. The market also punishes recklessness," I replied mildly. "Something I've learned over 30 years of keeping this company profitable through 3 recessions. Evelyn's smile remained fixed, but her eyes cooled noticeably. "Of course, your experience is invaluable." The way she hesitated before the last word sent a small chill down my spine. It wasn't the first time I'd sensed a certain dismissiveness from my daughter-in-law, but lately it seemed more pronounced. "We should get going," Liam interjected, checking his Rolex, a new one. I noticed, when had he replaced the watch Thomas and I had given him for his 30th birthday? "We have that lunch with the Morgans." "The Morgans?" I frowned again. "They're clients. Shouldn't I be there?" "Just a social lunch, Mom. David Morgan's daughter and Evelyn were at school together. Nothing business-related." I watched them leave. Evelyn's hand possessively on Liam's arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light. The bracelet was new. I was certain of it, just like the watch Liam was wearing, and the luxury car they'd driven to work in this morning. My son's salary is generous, but not that generous. Evelyn's role as marketing director pays well, but nowhere near enough to justify their apparently ever-expanding collection of luxury goods. Something didn't add up. Instead of going to my office, I changed direction and headed to the accounting department. Normally, I would have summoned Sarah Chen, my longtime administrative assistant, but something told me to keep my concerns private for now. Mrs. Harris, Marcus Wilson, the head accountant, looked startled to see me. "We weren't expecting you today. Just thought I'd check in." I smiled warmly, noting how Marcus's eyes darted nervously toward the door. "I'd like to see the quarterly expense reports, if you don't mind." The expense reports," Marcus's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Liam already reviewed those last week. He said you were stepping back from day-to-day operations." I kept my expression neutral despite the surge of alarm those words triggered. "Did he? How thoughtful of him to be concerned about my workload. But I'd still like to see them, of course." Marcus fumbled with his computer. "It's just, They're not quite finalized yet. Maybe if you came back tomorrow. I think now would be better. My voice remained pleasant, but I felt my eyes harden slightly. Unless there's a reason I shouldn't see them. Marcus's face flushed. No reason at all. It's just... He trailed off, clearly conflicted. I decided to change tactics. Marcus, you've been with this company for 12 years now? 13 next month, he confirmed. And in those 13 years, have I ever given you reason to believe I'd be anything but fair, even when mistakes were made? Marcus's shoulders slumped slightly. No, Mrs. Harris. Then please show me what has you so nervous. With visible reluctance, Marcus turned his monitor toward me and pulled up a spreadsheet. Liam said these were confidential until the board meeting next week. I scanned the document, my trained eye immediately spotting several irregularities. Client invoices that didn't match contract amounts, consulting fees to companies I'd never heard of, executive expenses that had nearly tripled in the past 2 quarters. Who authorized these expenses? I asked, pointing to a particularly large sum designated as strategic market research. Marcus hesitated. Evelyn did. Liam approved it. And what research was conducted? I don't know. The actual reports go directly to them. I scrolled through more entries, each more concerning than the last. A picture was forming, but I needed more information before I could be certain. Thank you, Marcus, I said finally, straightening up. Please don't mention my visit to Liam or Evelyn. I'd like to surprise them with how engaged I still am with the company's finances. Marcus looked visibly relieved not to be caught in the middle. Of course, Mrs. Harris. As I walked back to my office, my mind was racing. The expense reports confirmed my suspicions that something was seriously wrong, but they didn't tell the whole story. If Liam and Evelyn were embezzling funds, and the evidence certainly pointed in that direction, I needed irrefutable proof before confronting them. I also needed to understand the full scope of what they were doing. Were they simply siphoning money from the company, or was there something more sinister at play? The meeting with the Petersons that had been moved up, the social lunch with the Morgans, were clients being targeted somehow in my office? I closed the door and sat at my desk, a heavy feeling settling in my chest. If my suspicions were correct, my own son was stealing from me, betraying not just my trust, but the legacy I had built for him to inherit. The thought was almost too painful to bear. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas, dinner at Romano's tonight. Liam and Evelyn want to celebrate their Morgan deal. What Morgan deal? I stared at the message, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The social lunch was clearly business-related after all, business that Liam didn't want me involved in. I texted back, sounds lovely, 7:00 p.m. As I set my phone down, my gaze fell on the family photo on my desk, Liam's graduation from business school, all of us smiling proudly, full of hope for the future we would build together. Had it all been a lie? Had Liam been planning this betrayal even then? One thing was certain. I hadn't built a successful business by ignoring my instincts or shying away from difficult truths. If my son was stealing from my company, I would find out, and I would stop him, no matter how much it broke my heart. But I wouldn't confront him directly. Not yet. First, I needed a plan, something that would expose the truth in a way that not even Thomas, with his blind spot for our son, could deny. As I stared out the window at the city skyline, an idea began to form. Liam and Evelyn thought they were so clever. But they had forgotten one crucial fact, long before I was their mother and mother-in-law. I had been a formidable businesswoman who had outmaneuvered competitors twice my size. If they wanted to play games, I would show them exactly whom they were dealing with. Romano's was bustling with the usual Tuesday night crowd when I arrived. Thomas was already seated at our regular table, nursing his scotch on the rocks. After 38 years of marriage, I could read his mood from across the room, relaxed, proud, completely unaware of the storm brewing in our family business. There she is, he smiled, standing to kiss my cheek as I approached. The financial wizard herself. Hardly, I replied, settling into my chair. Just doing my job. Always downplaying your success, Thomas winked, signaling the waiter for my usual martini. Liam and Evelyn are running a bit late. Something about finalizing details with the Morgans. I kept my expression neutral. So, this Morgan deal, what exactly are we celebrating? Thomas looked surprised. You don't know, I thought. Well, Liam said they'd brought in the Morgans' entire portfolio. Apparently, David was so impressed with their presentation that he's moving all his family's business interests to us. The Morgans were a wealthy local family with diverse business holdings, exactly the type of client we specialized in serving. But David Morgan had been my client personally for over 15 years. Why would Liam and Evelyn be making presentations to him without my knowledge? How interesting, I said carefully. David hasn't mentioned any of this to me. Thomas frowned slightly. I'm sure Liam was going to brief you. You know how it is. When opportunity knocks, you have to move quickly. Before I could respond, Liam and Evelyn swept into the restaurant like celebrities, turning heads with their perfectly coordinated designer outfits and megawatt smiles. Evelyn's new diamond bracelets sparkled under the restaurant lights. Sorry we're late, Liam announced, bending to kiss my cheek. The Morgans had 1,000 questions, but we closed it. He raised his hands in a victory gesture. Congratulations, she said, watching his face carefully. It must have been quite the presentation to convince David to move his entire portfolio. Something flickered in Liam's eyes. Caution, perhaps, or calculation. Well, Evelyn deserves most of the credit. Her marketing approach is revolutionizing how we pitch to clients. Evelyn preened at the praise. It's all about understanding what people really want. The Morgans weren't just looking for financial advice. They wanted prestige, connection, a certain exclusivity. She sipped her wine, eyeing me over the rim. Sometimes the older generation doesn't fully grasp how important these emotional factors are in decision-making. I smiled thinly. How fortunate that the younger generation is here to educate us. Thomas, oblivious to the tension, raised his glass to Liam and Evelyn, the future of Harris Consulting. We clinked glasses, and I took a small sip of my martini, my mind quietly processing what I was hearing. The Morgan portfolio was worth millions in management fees alone. If Liam and Evelyn were redirecting clients away from the main company somehow, the implications were far worse than simple embezzlement. Throughout dinner, I observed as Liam and Evelyn detailed their success, noting how carefully they avoided specifics whenever I asked direct questions. Thomas beamed with paternal pride, completely taken in by their performance. I played along, laughing at the right moments, asking appropriately impressed questions while mentally cataloging every inconsistency in their story. We should all go to Aspen to celebrate, Evelyn suggested as dessert arrived. Liam and I were looking at chalets just last week. We could make it a family weekend. Aspen, I raised an eyebrow. Spring skiing, Liam explained quickly. The powder is still excellent, and we thought it would be a nice family getaway before the quarter ends. Before I could respond, Evelyn jumped in. And we have amazing news. We put a deposit on that lake house we've been eyeing. You know, the one on Lake Morrison. Thomas looked surprised. The Henderson property, but that was listed at what, $3,003,200, Evelyn corrected smugly. But worth every penny. We close next month. I took a deliberate sip of water, doing quick mental math. Even with their combined salaries and bonuses, there was no way Liam and Evelyn could afford a $3.2 million vacation home. Not unless they had another source of income or access to funds that weren't theirs. That's quite an investment, I observed mildly. You must be doing very well. Liam shifted slightly in his seat. The market's been good to us. Plus, Evelyn's family helped with the down payment. Evelyn's family was comfortable, but not wealthy. Certainly not help with a multi-million-dollar home wealthy. Another discrepancy to consider. The rest of dinner proceeded with similar revelations. Casual mentions of luxury purchases. Hints of deals I knew nothing about. Clients being approached without my knowledge. By the time we said our goodbyes in the parking lot, my concerns had solidified into something much more concrete. They're doing so well, Thomas said as we drove home, his voice warm with pride. Liam really takes after you, Rebecca. Perhaps, I replied, gazing out the window at the passing city lights. Later that night, while Thomas slept soundly beside me, I sat in our home office reviewing old company records. If Liam and Evelyn were systematically stealing from the company or diverting clients, there would be patterns, discrepancies that might not be obvious at first glance, but would reveal themselves under scrutiny. I started with the client list, comparing active accounts from 6 months ago to the current roster. Immediately, I spotted several high-value clients who were no longer listed, including the Wilsons, whom Liam had claimed I was busy working with just that morning. Next, I examined the expense reports Marcus had shown me, cross-referencing them with actual company activities. The strategic market research that Evelyn had authorized, over $150,000 in the past quarter alone, had produced no actual reports that I could find. The consulting fees went to a company called EC Strategic Partners, which a quick internet search revealed had been incorporated just 8 months ago. EC Strategic Partners, Evelyn Carter. It wasn't even subtle once you knew what to look for. By 2 Hazarode. I had compiled enough discrepancies to be absolutely certain. My son and his wife were systematically looting my company while diverting top clients to what I strongly suspected was their own competing firm. I leaned back in my chair, a cold feeling settling in my chest. The betrayal cut deep. They hadn't just taken money. They were trying to take everything I'd built over decades of hard work. I thought of Thomas, sleeping peacefully, still believing in the son he'd always defended and protected. I thought of my employees, whose livelihoods were at risk because of Liam and Evelyn's greed. I thought of the clients who trusted the Harris name, built on decades of hard work and integrity. This wasn't just about money. This was about justice, truth, and protecting what I'd spent my life building. As I finally climbed into bed beside my husband, I'd made my decision. I wouldn't just expose Liam and Evelyn. I would do it in a way that was so irrefutable, so clear-cut that not even Thomas could deny the truth. And I would make sure they faced the full consequences of their actions. They thought I was just a trusting mother, too sentimental and too detached from daily operations to notice their scheme. They were wrong. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The Harris Consulting Building was quiet at 7 a.m., with only the cleaning staff moving quietly through the hallways, perfect for what I needed to do. I made my way to Sarah Chen's desk. Sarah had been my executive assistant for 15 years, and if there was anyone in the company I could trust implicitly, it was her. Her desk was meticulously organized as always, her computer already humming to life. "Sarah," I said softly, startling her. She looked up, hand flying to her chest. "Mrs. Harris, I didn't expect you for at least another hour." "I need to speak with you privately," I said, keeping my voice low. "Not here. Can you meet me for coffee in 20 minutes at Harper's across the street?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded without hesitation. "Of course. I'll be there." 20 minutes later, seated in a quiet corner of the cafe, I watched Sarah's expression grow increasingly troubled as I laid out my suspicions. "I've noticed it too," she admitted finally. "Liam has been removing files from the secure server. When I asked about it, he said he was creating a more streamlined system for client management." "And the staff changes?" I asked. 7 long-term employees had left or been let go in the past 4 months. Sarah's eyes dropped to her coffee cup. "All people loyal to you. Liam always had a reason. Budget cuts, performance issues, restructuring, but it never quite added up." "Has he been handling the exit interviews himself?" She nodded. "That's new. He used to delegate those to HR." Another red flag. Liam was systematically removing anyone who might question his activities or remain loyal to me. "I need your help, Sarah," I said quietly. "But I have to warn you, this could get uncomfortable if Liam realizes you're assisting me." "Mrs. Harris," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm despite her soft tone. "I've worked for you for 15 years. My loyalty isn't in question." I felt a rush of gratitude for this steady, principled woman. "Thank you. First, I need access to all communication between Liam, Evelyn, and our top 20 clients for the past 6 months. Can you get that without alerting it?" "I have administrative access to the email server," she confirmed. "I can download the archives discreetly." "Good. Second, I need to know about any new business entities they might have created. The EC Strategic Partners is just the beginning. I suspect. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. My brother works for the State Business Registration Office. He might be able to help. Off the record. Perfect. And finally, I hesitated, hating what I was about to ask. I need eyes and ears in their offices when I'm not there. Sarah didn't flinch. The new security system has audio capabilities in the executive suites. It was installed for emergency situations, but the controls are accessible through the security office. Carl, the head of security, has been with us for 12 years. I'd forgotten about the new security system, another example of how Liam had been counting on my supposed detachment from operational details. Set up a meeting with Carl, I said. Discreetly. By the time I arrived at my office an hour later, my plan was taking shape. I needed 3 things: irrefutable evidence of their financial misconduct, proof of their intent to divert clients to their own venture, and a way to present this evidence that even Thomas couldn't dismiss. Liam stopped by my office mid-morning, knocking on the open door with that charming smile that had always melted my heart. Now I wondered how I'd missed the calculation behind it. Mom, I just wanted to check if you're free for the Peterson presentation next week. They specifically asked if you'd be there. The Petersons again, the same clients he'd met with yesterday without me. Of course, I replied, watching him carefully. Though I thought you'd already wrapped that up. A flicker of something, annoyance concern, crossed his face before the smile returned. Just preliminary discussions. The actual proposal presentation is next Tuesday. Evelyn is putting together something special. I nodded pleasantly. I look forward to it. And Liam, let's have lunch later this week. Just the 2 of us. It's been too long since we've had a proper catch-up. His smile faltered almost imperceptibly. Absolutely. I'll check my calendar and get back to you. After he left, I returned to reviewing the company's financial statements, now seeing the discrepancies that had been hidden in plain sight. Liam had been clever. The individual transactions weren't large enough to trigger automatic alerts, and they were disguised as legitimate business expenses, but together they painted a damning picture. Around noon, Sarah texted me, meeting set with Carl, 2 p.m., off-site. The security chief met me at a small cafe several blocks from the office. Carl Henderson was a former police detective who had transitioned to corporate security 15 years ago. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. Sarah briefed me, he said without preamble once we were seated. If what you suspect is true, this goes beyond internal theft. There are criminal implications. I'm aware, I replied. That's why I need to be absolutely certain before taking action. Carl nodded approvingly. Smart. The security system captures audio in all executive areas except bathrooms. Video is limited to common areas for privacy reasons. I can give you access to the feeds, but there's a potential legal issue. Explain. As the company owner, you have the right to monitor company premises, but if you're gathering evidence for potential criminal charges, we need to be careful about chain of custody. I considered this. For now, I just need to confirm my suspicions. We can worry about legal admissibility later, Carl agreed. And by the end of our meeting, I had access to the security system through a secure application on my personal tablet. Another piece in place. That evening, I received a text from Sarah. Found 3 more entities: EC Strategic Partners, Morgan Harris Holdings, and Lakeside Asset Management, all registered in the past 8 months, all listing L&E as principals. Morgan Harris Holdings. They were even using my family name to steal my clients. The audacity was breathtaking. Thomas was working late at the university, so I had the house to myself. I sat in my home office, organizing what I'd learned so far and planning my next steps. The evidence was mounting, but I needed something definitive, something that would make their betrayal so clear that not even Thomas could deny it. As I reviewed my notes, a notification appeared on my tablet. Movement in Liam's office. He had returned to the building despite the late hour. Curious, I activated the feed. Liam and Evelyn were there, speaking in hushed but excited tones as they reviewed documents spread across his desk. The Petersons are practically signed, Evelyn was saying. Once we get Rebecca to make the formal introduction at the presentation, they'll trust us completely. And they'll never know that their assets will be managed by Lakeside, not Harris, Liam added with a laugh. Mother's stamp of approval is still our best selling point. "They're using me," I whispered to the empty room, the final piece clicking into place. They weren't just stealing clients. They were using my reputation, my relationships to do it. I switched off the tablet, my resolve hardening. I now knew exactly what I needed to do. Liam and Evelyn wanted to use my reputation. Fine. I would give them the opportunity. But on my terms, not theirs. The trap I would set needed to be perfect, irrefutable, and public enough that there could be no denying what they had done. And I knew just how to do it. Over the next few days, I moved carefully, setting each piece of my plan in place while maintaining a facade of business as usual. To anyone watching, especially Liam and Evelyn, I appeared to be the same semi-detached company founder, gradually stepping back from daily operations to make room for the next generation. Only Sarah and Carl knew differently. With their help, I gathered evidence methodically, building a comprehensive picture of exactly what Liam and Evelyn had been doing. The scope of their betrayal was even larger than I had initially suspected. Through the security feeds, I learned they had already diverted 12 major clients to their shadow companies. Through financial records, I discovered they had siphoned nearly $1.2 million in company funds through fake consultancy fees and inflated expenses. And through emails Sarah recovered, I confirmed they planned to resign and take the company's biggest clients with them once they had secured enough business to launch publicly. They're planning to announce their new venture at the annual Client Appreciation Gala next month. I told Sarah during one of our off-site meetings. They'll have poached enough clients by then to survive the initial break. How can they possibly think they'll get away with this? Sarah asked, genuinely bewildered. The legal implications alone. They're counting on family ties, I replied. They assume I won't pursue legal action against my own son, and that even if I wanted to, Thomas would never allow it. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Liam and Evelyn viewed me not as a respected founder, but as a convenient stepping stone and, eventually, an obstacle to be removed. It was painful to accept, but the evidence was undeniable. By Friday, I had enough information to take action. I could have gone straight to the authorities or called an emergency board meeting to present my findings, but that approach had drawbacks. It would be messy, public, and would give Liam and Evelyn time to prepare their defenses or potentially destroy evidence. No, I needed something more definitive, something that would catch them in the act so blatantly that there could be no wriggling out of it. And for that, I needed bait they couldn't resist. The opportunity presented itself that afternoon when Liam finally followed up on my lunch invitation. "Sorry it took so long to get back to you, Mom," he said, popping his head into my office. "Things have been crazy busy. How's lunch on Monday sound?" "Perfect," I smiled. "And since we'll both be out of the office, I wonder if you could do me a favor over the weekend." "Of course," he replied immediately, solicitous. "What do you need?" "Thomas and I are revising our estate planning," I explained, watching his expression carefully. "Our financial advisor wants an updated list of our assets and accounts. Most of it's straightforward, but I realized I don't have the login information for my personal investment account, the one I set up after selling the vacation property. I think I left that folder at home in my bedroom. Could you possibly stop by and find it for me? The blue folder on my nightstand." I saw the flash of interest in his eyes, quickly concealed. "Sure, no problem. We're having dinner with Dad tomorrow night anyway. I can look for it then." "That would be wonderful. There's information about all my personal accounts in there, and I just haven't had time to sort through it." "Happy to help," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Anything specific I should look for?" "The blue folder has everything: account numbers, passwords, balances. Just grab the whole thing." I paused deliberately. "And Liam, don't mention this to your father. You know how he worries about estate planning. It makes him anxious about mortality." "Our secret," Liam promised, already mentally counting the money, if I read his expression correctly. After he left, I sat back in my chair, a mixture of sadness and determination washing over me. I had just offered my son bait I knew he wouldn't be able to resist: access to my personal finances separate from the company, with the added bonus of keeping it secret from Thomas. The blue folder did exist, and it did contain financial information, carefully curated and entirely fabricated for this purpose. Among the documents was information about a special reserve credit card with an extraordinary limit, tied to what appeared to be my largest personal account. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait and see if Liam would take the bait. Saturday evening, Thomas and I prepared to host Liam and Evelyn for dinner. I'd spent the afternoon cooking Thomas's favorite dishes, keeping my hands busy while my mind finalized every detail of my plan. "You've been quiet today," Thomas observed as he helped me set the table. "Everything all right?" "Just tired," I assured him. "It's been a busy week." "Liam mentioned you've been more involved at the office lately. I thought you were cutting back." I arranged the napkins carefully. "Just tying up some loose ends, making sure everything's in order." Thomas smiled affectionately. Always the perfectionist. "You know, you should be proud of how Liam has stepped up. The company couldn't be in better hands." The irony of his statement might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. "We'll see," I said noncommittally. Dinner went exactly as I expected. Evelyn dominated the conversation with stories of their social connections and luxury purchases, while Liam periodically checked his watch, no doubt eager for an opportunity to search for the folder I'd mentioned. After dessert, I deliberately left my wine glass half full and excused myself. "I've got a terrible headache coming on. I think I'll take something and lie down for a bit." "Do you want me to come with you?" Thomas asked, concerned. No, stay and visit. I just need to lie down in the dark for a while. Those new computer screens at the office are murder on my eyes." In our bedroom, I took the blue folder from the nightstand and placed it prominently on top. Then, I removed the small camera I'd hidden earlier and positioned it with a clear view of the nightstand. Finally, I took the sleeping pill I'd already palmed and washed it down with water from the bathroom sink. The medication was real, a prescription sleep aid I occasionally used for insomnia. Tonight, I needed to be genuinely asleep when Liam made his move. The appearance of deep sleep had to be authentic. Liam was many things, but he wasn't stupid. I changed into pajamas, turned off the lights except for a small lamp, and got into bed with a book. The sleeping pill would take about 30 minutes to work. By the time Liam came looking for the folder, I would be genuinely unconscious, but the camera would capture everything. As I felt the medication beginning to take effect, a wave of sadness washed over me. How had it come to this? Setting a trap for my own son, whom I'd raised, loved, and trusted with my life's work, but beneath the sadness was a steely resolve. Liam and Evelyn had made their choices. They had betrayed not just me, but everything I'd built, everyone who depended on Harris Consulting for their livelihoods, and every client who trusted us with their financial future. As I drifted towards sleep, I thought about what would happen next. Either Liam would take the bait, giving me the irrefutable evidence I needed, or he wouldn't, in which case I still had enough proof to take action, just with a less dramatic reveal. Either way, by Monday morning, everything would change. The thought followed me down into darkness as the sleeping pill finally took hold. I woke to the gentle beeping of my alarm, set for 5:00 a.m. My head felt heavy from the sleeping pill, but my mind cleared quickly as I remembered the events of the previous night. Reaching under my pillow, I found my phone and checked the security app. The camera had worked perfectly. There it was, in high-definition clarity, Liam entering my darkened bedroom at 11:17 p.m., moving quietly toward my nightstand. I watched as he hesitated briefly, looking at my sleeping form, before taking the blue folder. He also opened my purse, which I'd left strategically placed, and removed my premium credit card, the one connected to my highest limit account. I fast-forwarded through the footage, watching as he returned to the guest room where he and Evelyn were staying. They spent nearly 20 minutes going through the folder, their expressions growing increasingly excited as they reviewed the fabricated account statements showing personal assets of over $8 million separate from the company. "This is perfect," Evelyn whispered, her voice just audible on the recording. "We can use this card for the Bali trip. She'll never notice. She doesn't even check these statements." "We should be careful," Liam cautioned, though he was already pocketing the credit card. "Just the trip and maybe a few gifts. Nothing too obvious." "Please," Evelyn scoffed. "Your mother trusts you completely. Besides, by the time she notices anything, We'll have already launched Lakeside. This is practically a signing bonus for all the clients we're bringing over. I stopped the playback, a cold feeling settling in my stomach despite having anticipated exactly this outcome. Seeing and hearing their callous disregard, their entitled assumption that my money was theirs for the taking. It was one thing to suspect, another to witness. Moving quietly so as not to wake Thomas, I got out of bed and went to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. In the mirror, I looked tired but resolute. The trap had worked perfectly. Now for phase 2. I'd set up alerts on the credit card Liam had stolen. Any activity would trigger an immediate notification to my phone. By mid-morning, as Thomas and I were having a quiet breakfast, and Liam and Evelyn had already left for an early tennis game, the first alert came through first-class tickets to Bali, $30 400 5-star resort reservation, $28 $500, designer watch, Patek Philippe, $62,000 diamond necklace, 45 carats, $80,000, nearly $200,000 in under 2 hours. They hadn't even tried to be subtle. "Everything okay?" Thomas asked, noticing my expression as I checked my phone. "Fine," I smiled, setting the phone down. "Just some work notifications on a Sunday. Rebecca, you need to learn to delegate. That's why we brought Liam into the business. Remember? If only he knew." "You're right," I said, sipping my coffee. "I'm finding it hard to let go." By noon, the spending spree had topped $240,000. I forwarded the alerts to Sarah along with the video footage, adding them to our growing file of evidence. Then I sent a text to Liam. "Hope you and Evelyn are enjoying your tennis game. Don't forget our lunch tomorrow. Looking forward to catching up." His reply came quickly. "Great match. See you tomorrow at 12:30. Another lie. According to the credit card tracking, they were currently at a luxury car dealership across town, not anywhere near the tennis club. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. I worked in my home office, organizing the final pieces of evidence and preparing for what would come next. Thomas graded papers and prepared lectures for his upcoming classes, occasionally wandering in to chat or bring me tea. These ordinary moments felt strangely precious now, knowing how dramatically our lives would change within 24 hours. That evening, I called Sarah to confirm the final arrangements. "Everything's set for tomorrow," she assured me. "The conference room is booked for 2 p.m., and everyone you requested will be there. The board members, legal counsel, and the auditor. And they don't know the purpose of the meeting, only that it's urgent and confidential. I've prepared the packets as you requested." "Thank you, Sarah," I hesitated, then added, "After tomorrow, things will change significantly at Harris Consulting. I want you to know that whatever happens, your position is secure." "I appreciate that, Mrs. Harris, but my concern isn't for my job. It's for you. This can't be easy." Her empathy nearly broke my composure. "No," I admitted quietly. "It isn't." After we hung up, I checked the credit card alerts one final time before bed. The total had now reached just over $260,000, $250,000 stolen in a single day. The final purchase had been a pair of diamond cufflinks from Tiffany's, time-stamped just 30 minutes ago. As I prepared for bed, Thomas wandered in, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stood at the bathroom sink. "You seem tense," he observed, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "Is it the company Liam mentioned there might be some restructuring happening?" I turned to face him, studying the face I'd loved for nearly 4 decades. How would he look at me tomorrow when he learned what our son had done? Would he blame me? Stand by me? I simply didn't know. "It's nothing serious," I lied, hating the deception, but knowing it was necessary for just a few more hours. "Just some changes on the horizon." He kissed my forehead gently. "Change can be good, and with Liam at the helm, I'm sure the company is in excellent hands." I didn't respond, just leaned into his embrace and closed my eyes, storing away this moment of peace before the storm that was coming. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I dressed with particular care, choosing a tailored navy suit that always gave me confidence. Today, of all days, I needed to project absolute authority and composure. As I fastened my pearl earrings, a gift from Thomas on our 25th anniversary, I thought about the lunch meeting with Liam that would precede the board meeting. Should I confront him then? Give him a chance to explain or confess? Or would that just give him time to prepare excuses? Destroy evidence? Warn Evelyn? No, I decided. The evidence needed to be presented to everyone simultaneously. The element of surprise was crucial. I checked my phone one last time before leaving for the office. The credit card alerts had continued through the morning, another $20,000 at a luxury boutique just an hour ago. The total now stood at $284,625. Ready for your lunch with Liam? Thomas asked as I gathered my things. More than ready, I replied, the truth of the statement deeper than he could possibly understand. He kissed me goodbye at the door. Give him my best. And Rebecca, try to relax a little. Liam knows what he's doing. I managed to smile, though my heart felt like lead. Yes, he certainly does. With that, I headed to my car, ready to face the most difficult confrontation of my life. By this evening, everything would change. For me, for Thomas, for Liam and Evelyn, and for Harris Consulting. The midnight theft had set it all in motion. Now there was no turning back. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, choosing a quiet table in the back corner where we wouldn't be easily overheard. Bella's was one of Liam's favorite spots, an upscale Italian place where the staff knew him by name and always fawned over him as if he were visiting royalty. Today, that familiarity would work to my advantage. I needed him comfortable, confident, unsuspecting. As I waited, I checked my phone again. Another alert had come through. A $5,200 purchase at a high-end men's clothing store just 30 minutes ago. Liam was certainly making the most of his stolen credit card before our lunch. He arrived precisely on time, looking impeccable in what I suspected was a brand-new suit. The Patek Philippe watch gleamed on his wrist, one of yesterday's purchases, no doubt. Mom, he greeted me warmly, bending to kiss my cheek. You look great. That suit always was one of my favorites. Thank you, I replied, noting how easily the compliment came to him. You're looking well yourself. New watch. His hand went automatically to his wrist. A flicker of something, caution guilt, crossing his face before his smile returned. Yes, actually, an early anniversary gift from Evelyn. Another lie, so casually delivered. I wondered how many thousands of lies had preceded this one over the years. How long had he been deceiving me? Had there ever been a time when my son had been the person I thought he was? It's beautiful, I said. Evelyn has excellent taste. She does, he agreed, signaling for the waiter. Speaking of Evelyn, she wanted me to apologize for monopolizing the conversation at dinner Saturday. She gets carried away sometimes. No apology necessary. It's always interesting to hear about your lives. I paused as the waiter arrived to take our drink orders. By the way, did you find that folder I mentioned, the one with my financial information? Liam took a sip of water, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I looked, but I couldn't find it. Maybe you moved it. Another lie. That's strange. I was sure it was on my nightstand. I could look again next time we're over, he offered, the perfect concerned son. Don't worry about it. I called the financial advisor this morning and got the information directly from him. Something flickered in Liam's eyes. Alarm, quickly concealed. Oh, good. Problem solved. Then the waiter returned with our drinks, and we ordered our meals. Throughout the first course, we kept the conversation light, office gossip, Thomas's latest academic publication, an upcoming charity gala that Evelyn was helping organize. To anyone observing us, we would have appeared to be a mother and son enjoying a pleasant lunch together. But beneath the surface, I was cataloging every inconsistency, every careful evasion, every moment when Liam checked his phone a bit too anxiously. He was waiting for something, confirmation of the board meeting, perhaps, or updates from Evelyn about their plans. So, I said as our main courses arrived, tell me about this Peterson presentation tomorrow. I understand it's quite important. Liam launched into an explanation of their strategy, how Evelyn had developed a revolutionary approach to managing family assets across generations. He was animated, passionate, and entirely deceptive. Not once did he mention that the Petersons would actually be directed to Lakeside Asset Management, not Harris Consulting. It sounds impressive, I said when he finished. Though I'm curious, this new approach seems different from our traditional company philosophy. Are we shifting our overall strategy, Evolution, not revolution, Liam replied smoothly. The market is changing. Mom, we need to change with it. And these changes, they've all been documented and approved through proper channels, a slight narrowing of my eyes. Of course, everything's been handled according to company protocol. More lies. There had been no board approvals, no official documentation of these evolutionary changes, just Liam and Evelyn operating in the shadows, using the company's resources and reputation to build their own competing business. Good, I smiled. I'm glad to hear it. You know how I feel about proper procedures. Liam relaxed visibly, taking my words at face value. Always the stickler for details, but that's what built the company, right? Among other things, I agreed. Trust, integrity, client commitment. The foundations don't change, even if the methods evolve. He had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable, but it passed quickly. Exactly. As we finished our meals, I deliberately checked my watch. I should get back to the office. I have a meeting at 2. Anything important? Liam asked casually. Just some administrative matters, I replied. Nothing you need to worry about. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it, his expression changing subtly before he tucked the phone away. Everything all right? I asked. Fine, he said quickly. Just Evelyn confirming our dinner plans. But I'd seen enough of the text to know it wasn't from Evelyn. It was from Sarah, the automated message I'd asked her to send, reminder emergency board meeting 2 p.m., conference room A. Well, I should go, I said, gathering my purse. This was nice, Liam. We should do it more often. Definitely, he agreed, though his mind was clearly elsewhere now. Let me get the check. No need, I smiled. I took care of it when I arrived. Outside the restaurant, Liam made a show of heading toward the parking garage, but I knew he wouldn't return to the office immediately. He would call Evelyn first, try to figure out what the emergency board meeting was about. Perhaps even try to delay his return until it was over. It didn't matter. His presence wasn't required for what would happen next. As I drove back to the office, a profound sadness settled over me. This would be the last normal lunch I would ever have with my son. After today, nothing between us would ever be the same again. I thought back to the boy he had been. Bright, charming, seemingly honest. When had that boy become this man who could steal from his own mother, betray her trust, undermine her life's work? Had the seeds always been there? Or had I somehow failed him as a parent? These questions had no answers, at least not today. All I knew was that the evidence was irrefutable, the betrayal complete, and the consequences unavoidable. When I arrived at the office, Sarah was waiting by the elevator, a folder in her hands. Everything's ready, she said quietly. The board members are gathering in conference room A. Legal counsel arrived early and has reviewed all the documentation, and Liam called in, said he's running late, stuck in traffic, asked if the meeting could be delayed. I nodded, having expected exactly this. And Evelyn, in her office. She doesn't know she's expected at the meeting. I'll bring her in once everyone else is settled, as you requested. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. She met my eyes steadily. It's the right thing to do, Mrs. Harris. Difficult, but right. As we walked toward the conference room, I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. The time for doubt, for questioning, for second-guessing was over. I had given Liam and Evelyn every opportunity to behave honorably. They had chosen a different path. Now they would face the consequences of that choice. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 8 people sat around the polished mahogany table, 5 board members, our chief legal counsel, the head of our auditing firm, and Thomas, whom I'd asked Sarah to call in separately. His confused expression told me he had no idea why he was there. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I began, taking my place at the head of the table. I apologize for the urgency and secrecy, but after what I'm about to share, I believe you'll understand the necessity. Sarah entered quietly, distributing sealed folders to each person present. Please don't open these yet, I instructed. First, I need to provide some context. Thomas frowned, clearly concerned. Rebecca, what's going on? Where's Liam? Liam has been informed of this meeting. Whether he chooses to attend is his decision. I nodded to Sarah, who slipped out of the room again. She's going to bring Evelyn in. We need both of them to hear this. I began my presentation, keeping my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to surface. For the past several months, I've been investigating financial irregularities within Harris Consulting. What I discovered goes far beyond simple mismanagement or error. It represents a deliberate, systematic effort to defraud the company and its clients. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. Jonathan Weber, our longest-serving member, leaned forward. What kind of irregularities are we talking about? Rebecca? Embezzlement, client poaching, corporate espionage, creation of competing businesses using company resources. I paused as Evelyn entered, escorted by Sarah. Ah, Evelyn, please join us. We were just discussing the activities of EC Strategic Partners, Morgan Harris Holdings, and Lakeside Asset Management. Evelyn froze, her usual poise deserting her. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, I replied calmly. Please have a seat. Evelyn reluctantly took a seat beside Thomas, who was looking increasingly bewildered. Rebecca, you're not making any sense. What competing businesses? The ones your son and his wife have been building with company resources for the past 8 months, I said, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from my voice. The ones they've been diverting our top clients to while systematically undermining Harris Consulting from within. That's absurd, Evelyn protested, but her voice lacked conviction. This is some kind of misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I replied. You may all open your folders now. For the next several minutes, the room was silent except for the sound of pages turning as everyone reviewed the evidence I'd compiled. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers, emails between Liam, Evelyn, and key clients discussing their transition to the new firms. Corporate registration documents clearly showing Liam and Evelyn as principals of the competing businesses. And finally, screenshots of the credit card charges from the past 24 hours, accompanied by stills from the bedroom security footage showing Liam taking the card from my purse. Thomas's face drained of color as he processed what he was seeing. This can't be right, he whispered, but there was no conviction in his voice. The evidence was too overwhelming, too detailed, too damning. Evelyn had abandoned any pretense of innocence and was now texting frantically under the table, no doubt warning Liam not to come to the meeting. Put the phone away, Evelyn, I said firmly. It's too late for damage control. The door opened and Liam walked in, his expression a careful mask of confusion that dissolved into shock when he saw the open folders on the table and the stony faces of the board members. What's going on? He asked, trying to sound casual but failing utterly. Sit down, Liam, I said. We were just reviewing how you and Evelyn have been stealing from the company, diverting clients to your secret businesses, and most recently, using my personal credit card for $250,000 in luxury purchases. His eyes darted to the folder in Thomas's hands, then to Evelyn's pale face, then back to me. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. What to admit, what to deny, how to spin this into something less damning. Mom, this is a massive misunderstanding, he began, his voice taking on the soothing tone he used when trying to manage difficult clients. Yes, Evelyn and I have been exploring some independent business opportunities, but everything has been above board. As for the credit card, that was just a mistake. I thought it was the company card for client entertainment. Client entertainment, I repeated. A $62,000 watch is client entertainment, first-class tickets to Bali, a diamond necklace for Evelyn. He faltered, his carefully constructed explanation collapsing under the weight of specific details. I can't explain that. No need, I said. The explanation is quite simple. You saw an opportunity to steal, and you took it, just as you've been stealing from this company for months, just as you've been planning to steal our clients and our reputation. Thomas finally found his voice. Liam, tell me this isn't true. Tell me there's another explanation. The desperation in his eyes nearly broke my heart. Thomas had always believed in Liam unconditionally, had always defended him. had always seen the best in him, even when evidence suggested otherwise. Now, faced with irrefutable proof of our son's betrayal, he looked utterly lost. Liam seemed to deflate, the confident facade crumbling. "Dad, it's not what it looks like. We were just trying to modernize, to build something new. With stolen money, with poached clients." Thomas's voice rose. "With lies to your mother and me." Evelyn, seeing the situation deteriorating rapidly, tried a different approach. "This is ridiculous. You can't prove any of this is illegal. Starting a new business isn't a crime." She paused, then added with a glance at Liam. "And as for the credit card, that was Liam's mistake, not mine." The instant betrayal, throwing her husband under the bus to save herself, spoke volumes. Jonathan Weber cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Harris asked me to invite Mr. Daniels from our legal department to explain the potential criminal charges." He nodded to the lawyer, who began listing violations of corporate law, fiduciary duty, fraud statutes, and theft. As the litany of potential charges continued, I watched Liam and Evelyn. Their expressions shifted from defiance to concern to genuine fear as they realized the seriousness of their situation. This wasn't just about losing their jobs or facing family disapproval. They could be facing actual criminal prosecution. However, I interrupted when the lawyer had finished. "Prosecution is not my preferred outcome." All eyes turned to me, surprise evident on every face. Despite everything, Liam is still my son, and while I cannot and will not allow this behavior to continue, I am offering an alternative to criminal charges. I slid a document across the table toward Liam and Evelyn. "This is a separation agreement. It outlines the terms under which Harris Consulting will not pursue criminal charges." Liam stared at the document, his face unreadable. "Those terms include immediate resignation from all positions, full restitution of all stolen funds, dissolution of your competing businesses, and a legally binding non-compete agreement." "And if we refuse?" Evelyn asked, her voice brittle. "Then the evidence in those folders goes directly to the district attorney's office." I said simply. "The choice is yours." The boardroom fell silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of the moment. My son and his wife had committed crimes that could send them to prison. I was offering them a way out, not without consequences, but without the utter destruction of their lives. It was more mercy than they deserved, but less than my heart wanted to give them. The perfect, painful middle ground that felt like failure, no matter which way I looked at it. In that moment of suspended time, with all eyes on Liam and Evelyn, I felt nothing but hollow exhaustion. There would be no winners here today, only varying degrees of loss. "I need to consult with our attorney before signing anything," Liam finally said, breaking the heavy silence. "Of course," I replied evenly, "but the offer expires at 500 p.m. today. After that, we proceed with filing criminal charges." Evelyn shot Liam a panicked look. "We can't possibly—" "Not now, Evelyn." He cut her off, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "We need to step outside." I nodded to Sarah, who escorted them to a smaller conference room where they could make their calls privately. As the door closed behind them, the tension in the boardroom shifted. The board members began quietly discussing the implications for the company. While the auditor made notes about accounts that would need immediate review, Thomas sat motionless, staring at the documents in front of him. I could almost see the weight of reality crushing down on him, the undeniable evidence that the son he'd always defended, always believed in, had betrayed us both in the most fundamental way. "I'd like a moment alone with my wife," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. The others filed out respectfully, leaving us sitting at opposite ends of the long table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. What could we possibly say that would make any of this better? "How long have you known?" Thomas finally asked. "Suspected a few weeks, known with certainty only a few days. And you didn't tell me." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I couldn't, not without proof. You wouldn't have believed me." He flinched at the truth of it. "I would have—" "No, Thomas," I interrupted gently. "You wouldn't have. You've never believed anything negative about Liam. Not when his college roommate accused him of stealing. Not when his first boss reported him for expense account irregularities. Not when our neighbors caught him using their pool while they were away after they'd explicitly told him not to. Those were different. Minor indiscretions. Not this. He gestured helplessly at the folder. Not theft, not betrayal on this scale. It's the same pattern. Just escalated, I said. Liam has always believed rules don't apply to him, and we, especially you, have always protected him from consequences. Thomas's face crumpled. So this is my fault I loved our son too much, believed in him too much, and that turned him into a criminal. I reached across the table, taking his hand. No, Liam made his own choices, but we did fail him in one crucial way. We never taught him that actions have consequences, and now the consequence could be prison. Thomas withdrew his hand, running it through his hair in a gesture so like Liam's that it made my heart ache. How can you be so calm about this, so cold? The accusation stung, but I understood it came from his pain. I'm not cold, Thomas. I'm heartbroken. But one of us needs to stay focused on what has to be done. And what exactly is that destroying our son's life, his marriage, his future? Liam destroyed those things himself, I replied, trying to keep the edge from my voice. I'm trying to save what can be saved. The company, our employees' livelihoods, our clients' trust. And yes, I'm trying to give Liam a chance to avoid prison, which is more mercy than most people in my position would show. Thomas fell silent again, the fight draining out of him. What happens now? Either they sign the agreement or they don't. Either way, Harris Consulting continues. We have contingency plans in place for both scenarios. He looked up sharply. You've discussed this with others before telling me. I had to. Thomas, this isn't just a family matter. It's a business with over 100 employees and clients who trust us with billions in assets. I had legal and fiduciary obligations that went beyond our family dynamics. He nodded slowly, accepting this, if not entirely understanding. And us? What happens to us after this? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean, our marriage, Rebecca? How do we move forward knowing what our son has done, knowing how differently we see this situation? It hadn't occurred to me that our marriage might be collateral damage in this implosion. Thomas and I had weathered many storms together over nearly 4 decades. Career changes, financial setbacks, health scares, the ordinary stresses of raising a child. But this was different. This struck at the very foundation of how we saw our family, our son, and perhaps even each other. I don't know, I admitted quietly. I just know we can't build anything real on lies and self-deception. Whatever happens next has to start with truth. Before Thomas could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sarah entered, her expression carefully neutral. Liam and Evelyn would like to speak with you both. They returned, looking subdued but composed. Evelyn's earlier panic had been replaced by a cold resignation. Liam appeared almost calm, though the tightness around his eyes betrayed his stress. We'll sign, he said without preamble. But we want one modification to the agreement. What modification? I asked cautiously. The non-compete is too restrictive. 10 years in the financial sector means we'd essentially have to change careers entirely. We're willing to accept 5 years and a narrower geographical restriction. I glanced at our legal counsel, who gave a slight nod. We can accommodate that change. Everything else remains as written, including full restitution. Do you have any idea what that will do to us financially? Evelyn asked, her voice brittle. We'll lose everything. The house. The cars. Yes, I said simply. You'll lose the material trappings you acquired through fraud and theft. That seems appropriate. She flushed with anger, but remained silent as the lawyer made the requested modifications to the agreement. When the new documents were printed, Liam and Evelyn signed them without further comment. What now? Liam asked, pushing the signed papers across the table. Now you clean out your offices and turn in your company property, I replied. Your resignations will be announced as a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. The board will issue a statement expressing gratitude for your contributions and confidence in the company's future. A golden parachute we don't deserve, Liam observed, a hint of his old cynicism returning. Not for your sake, I corrected him. For the company's, For the employees who depend on Harris Consulting for their livelihoods, for the clients who trust us with their financial futures. They don't need to know the ugly truth. Thomas spoke for the first time since Liam and Evelyn had returned. Where will you go? What will you do? Liam shrugged, not meeting his father's eyes. We still have some savings, enough to rent a place somewhere and figure out our next steps. Which won't be in financial consulting, Evelyn added bitterly. Thanks to the non-compete? There are other fields, I pointed out. Other ways to make a living that don't involve betraying people's trust. Liam flinched at that, the first sign that something, shame, regret, reality, might be breaking through his protective shell of entitlement. You should go now, I said, suddenly exhausted by their presence. Sarah will assist you in gathering your personal items. As they stood to leave, Liam paused, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For what it's worth, I never meant it to go this far. It started small, just a side project, a backup plan. Then it snowballed. It always does, I replied. But that doesn't change what you did or the choices you made. After they left, Thomas and I sat in silence again, the signed agreement between us like a physical manifestation of our family's fracture. Outside the boardroom, I could hear the muffled sounds of the office continuing its normal operations. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, occasional laughter, life going on, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred within these walls. I should go, Thomas finally said. I need time to process all this. I nodded, understanding. Take whatever time you need. I'll be at the office late tonight. There's a lot to manage in the wake of this. He stood, gathering his coat, then paused. The credit card. Rebecca. The one in the video. Was that real? Did he actually steal $250,000 from you in one day? The card was real, I replied carefully. But it wasn't connected to any of my actual accounts. It was a trap. A card I set up specifically for this purpose, with a temporary high limit and immediate alerts. Thomas stared at me, something like awe mixing with the hurt in his eyes. You set him up. I gave him an opportunity to show his true character, I corrected. He made the choice to steal. I simply made sure there would be irrefutable evidence when he did. Always 3 steps ahead, Thomas murmured. I forget sometimes just how formidable you are. I couldn't tell if it was admiration or accusation in his voice. Perhaps a bit of both. After he left, I sat alone in the boardroom, the weight of the day finally catching up to me. My son was a thief who had betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. My marriage was on uncertain ground. My company faced a major transition with the sudden departure of 2 top executives. Yet beneath the pain and uncertainty, I felt something unexpected, a quiet strength, a clarity of purpose that had been missing in recent years. The worst had happened, and I had faced it. I had protected what mattered, stood firm for what was right, and refused to look away from difficult truths. Whatever came next, I would face it with that same clarity and resolve. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The official story that Liam and Evelyn had resigned to pursue other opportunities was accepted without much question by most employees and clients. A few of our longest-standing clients received a more detailed explanation from me personally, under strict confidentiality. Their loyalty, in turn, strengthened my resolve that I'd made the right decision. Sarah proved invaluable during this transition, handling everything from reassigning Liam and Evelyn's clients to coordinating with IT to secure our systems against any potential retaliation. I promoted her to operations director, a position she'd long deserved but that Liam had repeatedly blocked, claiming she lacked executive presence. I don't know what to say, she'd stammered when I offered her the role. This is unexpected. It shouldn't be, I'd replied. You've been doing half the job already without the title or compensation. It's long overdue. The board unanimously approved her promotion, along with my proposal for a restructured leadership team that distributed responsibilities more evenly and established better oversight. No single person, not even me, would have the kind of unchecked authority that had allowed Liam to do so much damage. At home, things remained strained between Thomas and me. He'd moved into the guest room, claiming he needed space to think. We were polite with each other. even kind in a distant way. But the easy intimacy we'd built over decades had been replaced by something cautious and uncertain. 3 weeks after what I'd come to think of as the reckoning, I arrived home to find Thomas sitting in the living room, a glass of scotch in hand and a determined expression on his face. "We need to talk," he said as I set down my briefcase. "All right," I agreed, taking a seat across from him. "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about Liam, about us, about everything, and I owe you an apology." He set down his glass, meeting my eyes directly. "I've been blaming you, in a way, for exposing Liam's actions, as if the revelation was the problem, not what he actually did." "That's a natural reaction," I said carefully. "No, but I should have been able to see it," he insisted. "All those incidents over the years that I dismissed or defended, they were warning signs. Weren't they signs I chose to ignore because it was easier than facing the truth?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, I think they were. Baby. Why didn't you confront me about it before now?" It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself many times over the years. I tried, in subtle ways, but whenever I expressed concerns about Liam's behavior, you'd get defensive. Eventually, I stopped trying. It seemed easier to manage the situations quietly than to fight with you about them. "I made you carry that burden alone," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "While I played the good cop parent, you were left to be the disciplinarian, the voice of reason, the bad guy." "It wasn't quite that simple," I offered. "You gave Liam emotional support and encouragement that didn't always come naturally to me. We balanced each other in some ways. But in the most important way, I failed," Thomas continued. "I failed to help raise a son with integrity. I failed to stand with you when you tried to instill those values. And most recently, I failed to support you through one of the most difficult decisions any parent could face." His words loosened something tight in my chest. "Thank you for saying that. I've spoken with him," Thomas continued. "Liam, I mean, without Evelyn present, this surprised me. Yesterday, I went to their new apartment," he grimaced slightly. "It's quite a step down from their previous lifestyle, a one-bedroom in a neighborhood that can generously be described as transitional. I couldn't help but think of the lake house they'd put a deposit on, the luxury purchases, the entitlement that had led them to this diminished circumstance. How is he angry, bitter, blaming everyone but himself?" Thomas sighed heavily. "But also, I think, beginning to face reality. He's applied for several positions outside the financial sector, been rejected from all of them so far. His reputation in the industry seems to have taken a hit despite our discretion." "Word travels in business circles," I said. "We didn't announce the real reason for his departure, but people talk. Clients ask questions." "He's working at a call center now," Thomas said quietly. "Customer service for a cable company. Evelyn is trying to rebuild her social media presence as an influencer, but apparently most of her friends have disappeared now that she can't host parties in a mansion or take luxury vacations. I took no pleasure in their downfall, only a sad recognition of natural consequences." "They're young," I said. "They have time to rebuild their lives, make better choices." "If they learn from this," Thomas agreed. "That's what I told Liam, that this could be rock bottom or it could be a turning point. His choice." "And his response? Mixed. He's still angry with you, feels betrayed, but I think reality is starting to sink in." Thomas hesitated. "He asked if you would consider reducing the restitution payments. Said they're drowning financially." I shook my head firmly. "The payments stay as agreed. They stole that money. Thomas, from the company, from clients, from me personally. Actions have consequences." "That's what I told him," he said, surprising me again. "That he needed to honor the agreement and prove he could be trustworthy again, even if it's difficult." "Thank you," I said quietly, "for standing with me on this." He reached across the space between us, taking my hand. "I should have been standing with you all along. I'm sorry it took something this extreme to make me see that." His touch was warm, familiar, the first real connection we'd had in weeks. "Where does this leave us?" I asked, echoing his question from the boardroom. That depends, he replied. Can you forgive me for failing you, for not seeing what was happening with Liam, for blaming you when you finally exposed it? I considered his question carefully. I think forgiveness is a process, not a single decision, but I want to work toward it. I've missed you. Thomas. Missed us. I've missed us too. He squeezed my hand gently. Maybe we could start with dinner, just the two of us. Talk about something other than the company or Liam for a change. It was a small step, but an important one. I'd like that. Later that evening, as we shared a simple meal at our kitchen table, I felt a tentative hope taking root. Thomas and I had a long way to go to rebuild the trust and intimacy that had been damaged. But we were making a start. Much like Harris Consulting, our marriage was entering a rebuilding phase, more carefully structured, more vigilant against potential weaknesses, but still founded on decades of shared history and genuine care. After dinner, as we washed dishes together in a companionable silence, Thomas asked, "Have you thought about what comes next for you at the company?" "I have," I admitted. "I'm stepping back into a more active role for now to stabilize things after Liam and Evelyn's departure. But long term, I'm considering a different approach to succession planning. Not another family member, I hope," Thomas said with a wry smile. "No," I laughed softly. "I'm thinking more along the lines of developing talent from within. People who've proven their loyalty and capability over years, not months. People like Sarah. She always was remarkably competent," Thomas observed. "Liam never gave her enough credit." "Many people didn't," I agreed. "Including me at times, but that's changing now. As I dried the last plate and put it away, I felt a sense of purpose that had been missing in recent years. Harris Consulting would survive this crisis and emerge stronger, with leadership that truly embodied the values I'd tried to build the company on. My marriage, too, might eventually heal, with honest communication replacing the comfortable but ultimately damaging patterns we'd fallen into. And Liam, that remained to be seen. The path to redemption was there if he chose to take it, but the journey would be his to make. I couldn't walk it for him, couldn't shield him from the consequences of his actions any longer. In that way, perhaps this painful episode was a gift of sorts, a final opportunity for my son to grow into the man I'd always hoped he would become, rather than the entitled, dishonest person he'd allowed himself to be. Only time would tell if he would take that opportunity. For now, I had a company to rebuild, a marriage to repair, and a life to reclaim, one truthful step at a time. 6 months passed, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Harris Consulting not only survived the transition, but thrived under the new leadership structure. Without Liam and Evelyn's hidden sabotage, client retention improved dramatically, and the atmosphere in the office transformed from tense uncertainty to collaborative energy. Sarah exceeded even my highest expectations in her new role, bringing a fresh perspective while honoring the company's core values. Several other longtime employees stepped into leadership positions that Liam had previously blocked them from, creating a diverse and experienced executive team. At home, Thomas and I had gradually rebuilt our relationship. The guest room was empty again, and while we'd never recapture the blind trust of our early years, we'd developed something perhaps more valuable, a partnership based on honest communication and mutual respect. Our weekly date nights had become a sacred ritual, a time to connect without the pressures of work or family drama. As for Liam and Evelyn, we received updates primarily through Thomas, who maintained limited contact with them. They had moved to a different city, both working jobs that they would have considered beneath them a year ago. Evelyn had abandoned her influencer aspirations and was now a sales associate at a department store. Liam worked in the back office of a small manufacturing company, doing basic accounting, as close to financial work as he could get while honoring the non-compete agreement. The restitution payments came like clockwork each month, not without complaint, according to Thomas, but they came nonetheless. It would take years to repay the full amount, a constant reminder of their choices and their consequences. I had not spoken directly to Liam since the day in the boardroom. He had made no attempt to contact me, and I had respected that distance. believing that any reconciliation would need to begin with him acknowledging the gravity of what he had done. So far, that acknowledgement hadn't come. Until today. "Mrs. Harris," Sarah's voice came through the intercom on my desk. "There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. But—" she hesitated. "It's Liam." My heart stuttered in my chest. "Liam is here now." "Yes. Should I tell him you're unavailable?" I considered it briefly. Part of me wanted to refuse, to maintain the boundary that had been established, but another part, the mother who still loved her son despite everything, couldn't turn him away. "No, it's all right. Send him in." As I waited, I straightened the papers on my desk, a nervous habit I thought I'd outgrown decades ago. What could he want after all this time? Money, a reduction in the restitution payments, the softening of the non-compete agreement. The door opened, and Liam stepped in. I barely recognized him at first. Gone was the expensive suit, the perfectly styled hair, the confident swagger. This Liam wore khakis and a simple button-down shirt, his hair cut in a practical, inexpensive style. He'd lost weight, and there was a weariness about him that hadn't been there before. "Mom," he said simply, standing awkwardly just inside the doorway. "Liam?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit down." He did, his movements stiff, uncomfortable. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy with 6 months of separation and years of damaged trust. "You look well," he finally said. "The company seems to be doing well, too." "Yes," I agreed on both counts. "And you?" He shrugged slightly. "Surviving. It's been an adjustment." I waited, letting him find his way to whatever had brought him here. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said finally, as if reading my thoughts. "I know that's what you're probably expecting, that I want money, or a reduction in payments, or some kind of exemption from the agreement." The thought had crossed my mind, I admitted. "No," he shook his head firmly. "I'm here because I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the excuses I tried to offer that day in the boardroom." This was unexpected. I kept my expression neutral, not wanting to discourage him, but not quite ready to accept whatever he might offer. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 6 months," he continued, "about who I am, who I've been, about the choices I made and why I made them. And what conclusions have you reached?" He met my eyes directly for the first time. "That I've been living my entire adult life with a sense of entitlement that was completely unjustified. That I convinced myself I deserved special treatment, deserved more than what I earned. That I used Dad's unconditional support and your success as excuses for my own failings." His honesty surprised me. This didn't sound like the Liam who had left my office 6 months ago, angry and defensive. "What changed?" I asked. "Reality," he said with a humorless laugh. "Losing everything has a way of clarifying what matters. But also therapy. Evelyn and I both started seeing someone, separately. The marriage didn't survive once we couldn't blame external factors for our problems." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite my issues with Evelyn, divorce was painful for anyone. "Don't be. It was for the best." Liam leaned forward slightly. "The therapist helped me see patterns I've been repeating my whole life. Taking shortcuts, blaming others, expecting special treatment, using charm to manipulate situations." He paused. "All things you tried to address when I was younger, which I ignored or argued away." I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. Mom, what I did to you, to the company, to our family, it was unconscionable. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way, and I have to live with that." "Then what are you asking for?" I kept my voice gentle despite my lingering caution. "Nothing," he shook his head. "I just needed to tell you that I know what I did was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. Not a mistake or a misunderstanding or a situation that got out of hand, but a deliberate series of choices I made because I thought I was entitled to more than I had." His words settled between us, heavy with a sincerity I hadn't expected. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt a glimmer of something like hope for my son's future. "Thank you for that," I said finally. "It can't have been easy to come here and say these things." "It wasn't," he agreed. "But it's nothing compared to what I put you through." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else I wanted to tell you. I've been working with a nonprofit financial literacy program in some of the poorer neighborhoods, teaching basic budgeting, how to avoid predatory loans, that kind of thing. It's volunteer work, just evenings and weekends. But it feels right. Like I'm using what I know to help people for a change instead of exploiting them." This genuinely surprised me. "That's commendable, Liam. It's not enough to make up for what I did," he said quickly. "Nothing could be, but it's a start, a different path." We talked for nearly an hour, covering ground we should have covered years ago. Liam spoke openly about the pressure he'd felt to live up to my success, the resentment that had festered when things didn't come as easily to him as he thought they should, the toxic dynamics in his marriage that had encouraged his worst impulses. I spoke about my own regrets, how I'd perhaps focused too much on results rather than character when raising him, how I'd allowed Thomas's indulgence to go unchallenged too often, how I'd sometimes used financial support as a substitute for emotional connection. It wasn't a miraculous reconciliation. Too much damage had been done for that. But it was something I hadn't dared to hope for, an honest conversation between adults acknowledging hard truths and taking responsibility for their own roles in what had happened. As Liam prepared to leave, he paused by the door. "I don't expect things between us to ever be the same. I know trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to fully restore. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be better, to be someone you might eventually be proud of again, even if from a distance. I've always been proud of your potential, Liam," I said carefully. "I'm glad to see you starting to fulfill it, even under these difficult circumstances." After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, processing what had just happened. The apology didn't erase the betrayal or magically heal the wounds it had created, but it was a beginning, a sign that perhaps my son wasn't entirely lost to the entitled, dishonest person he had become. That evening, I recounted the conversation to Thomas over dinner. "It sounds like he's genuinely trying to change," he said, hope evident in his voice. "Perhaps," I agreed cautiously. "Time will tell if it's lasting change or just a phase born of necessity." "You don't seem convinced," Thomas observed. I considered my words carefully. "I want to believe in his transformation, but I've spent too many years making excuses for him, seeing what I wanted to see rather than what was actually there. This time, I need actions, not just words, sustained over time." "That's fair," Thomas acknowledged, "and probably healthier for both of you in the long run." Later that night, as we prepared for bed, Thomas asked, "Do you ever regret it, setting the trap with the credit card, exposing everything the way you did? I thought about the chaos of the past 6 months, the restructuring of the company, the strain on our marriage, the painful separation from our only child. But I also thought about the honesty that had replaced comfortable lies, the integrity that had been restored to my company. And now, possibly, the beginning of genuine growth in my son." "No," I said finally. "It was painful, more painful than I could have imagined, but necessary. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions." "Even when that someone is your child?" Thomas asked softly. "Especially then," I replied, "because otherwise they never truly grow up." As I turned out the light, I thought about the credit card that had started it all, the bait in a trap that had ultimately caught not just a thief, but perhaps in some strange way, had freed a son to finally become the man he was capable of being. The path forward remained uncertain. Trust, once shattered, could never be fully restored to its original innocent state. But perhaps something new could grow in its place, something more mature, more honest, more resilient because it had been tested by fire. Only time would tell, and for the first time in many years, I was content to let time do its work without trying to control the outcome. As we had learned the hard way, true integrity couldn't be forced or faked. It had to be chosen, day after day, decision after decision, Liam was making that choice now, it seemed, and though the cost had been devastating, that alone gave me hope. "Good night, Thomas," I whispered in the darkness. His hand found mine under the covers, warm and steady. "Good night, Rebecca." In that simple touch, I felt the promise of our own rebuilding, a marriage strengthened by surviving its greatest test, a partnership forged anew in the crucible of painful truth. Whatever came next for our family, we would face it together, older and wiser, perhaps, but also more authentic than we had been in years. And that, I realized, was its own kind of victory. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.